Hello friends. Welcome to our channel. Today we will hear confession from Grace, who got into much trouble in life because of her relatives. Without wasting any time, let's hear our main character take us through her painful experience. I will tell my story from the beginning. My life was ruined because of slander and outrageous events unfolding around my family. My name is Grace. I was born into a good family. Since my uncle was living in neighborhood, I would constantly visit them in my childhood. I was the only child in the family and used to get very bored at home and visit my uncle. My uncle loved me very much. He had 2 sons. The older son, Jaden, was the same age as me. The younger one was 2 years younger than me. His name was Zach. My aunt and uncle loved me very much. My uncle always hugged me when I came to them and bought me presents. He took care of me like I was his own daughter. That's how our childhood went, and I grew up with them without any problems. I grew up like a boy because there weren't many girls around me. When I was 16, my parents told me not to visit my uncles so often anymore and not to be as close with my cousins as before. I didn't understand anything from my mother's words back then, but I couldn't disobey her. Why should I be estranged from the people I was friends with as a child? I didn't comprehend it at the time. As we were entering puberty, my mother warned me that this phase could be challenging, emphasizing that I might not fully understand my desires and preferences yet. I was trying to pay attention to my mother's words, and I didn't go to my uncle's place as much as I used to. But because I was very bored at home, I ended up visiting them as usual. I went to my uncle's home again. I hugged my uncle and kissed him on his face. He hugged me the same way and called me dear girl. When my uncle went to his room, my aunt grabbed me by my arm and cornered me. She was telling me to watch my actions. At that moment she threatened me. "What do you think you are doing?" she shouted. I was a little girl and there was nothing between me and my uncle. I didn't know how my aunt could think of such things. I was very surprised, and that day I went home and cried. Once my uncle's eldest son Jaden visited us. He needed to grab something from our house. I was alone at home. He came in and we talked for a while. When I told him what my aunt had told me, Jaden's face changed. Then the conversation was about girls. Jaden said he didn't like any girls. He was talking nonsense. He was asking why I didn't come over like I used to. I told him the whole story and what my aunt had told me. She was his mother and she was going to protect him, but I told him anyway. He was sitting next to me and suddenly started kissing me. I pushed him away with my hand and asked him what he was doing. George blushed and left the house. My mother was right. I had to be careful and stay away from my cousins because we were teenagers. I wasn't going to tell anyone what had happened between me and Jaden, and I warned him not to tell anyone about what happened between us. I hated Jade for what he did. I didn't want to go to my uncle's anymore. But sometimes we would go to my uncle's place for dinner, and I couldn't say no. I couldn't disobey my family. 3 weeks after the incident with Jade, we visited them for dinner again. I was very upset because I had lost my close friend. He died of cancer and I had been crying every night for a week due to grief. Even though I didn't want to go, my mother insisted on taking me to my uncle's. I didn't have much appetite, and after eating a little I went to the other room because I had to cry. I was trying to wipe tears from my eyes. After a while, my uncle came into the room and hugged me. He asked me what had happened and started wiping my tears. My uncle was like my father, and it was very normal for him to hug me and even kiss me on the face. But there was one problem, and that was my aunt. My aunt was not in her right mind, and it was as I expected. My aunt saw us in the room. I was hugging my uncle and crying. My aunt started yelling and asking me what I was doing. She cursed me and insulted me. I was only 16 years old, and I could not accept these words. I started crying even more. "Do you realize what you are saying?" my uncle asked my aunt. My parents came over at the sound. They asked what had happened. My aunt told them that I had taken her children away from her and was now tricking her husband. She alleged that I had an affair with Jaden and I wouldn't leave Jaden alone. My mom and dad asked me if it was true, although they already knew that I was innocent. I cried and denied everything that my uncle's wife was saying. I hugged my mom and asked my parents to leave that place. While we were leaving, my uncle came up to us and said that his wife was not in her right mind as her sister's husband has abandoned her, and she was scared that I would leave her as well. After that day, I didn't go to my uncle's anymore. They didn't visit us either. I didn't talk to my cousins anymore. My aunt had sown seeds of enmity between our families. I was embarrassed because of the slanders. I told my mother everything that had happened. My mother understood me and knew that I was innocent. As to my father, he didn't love me like before. I didn't understand why, and I was extremely sad because of this. Years passed. I got married and didn't even invite my uncle's family to my wedding. Those depressing days were gone. But I could have committed suicide because of the slander of my uncle's wife. My mother supported me and always stayed by my side. Thanks to her support, I survived those dark days. Now I have my own children and a husband. I am very happy with my life, but I wanted to share my story with you as a lesson learned in life.